Okay. One last one. My mistake. It's one that looks like, and I didn't print it because I think this blue shows up okay. It's kind of that, I call them ocean blue or whatever. Now, we haven't had one that had open dots in it, so this is going to be your first experience with what I like the variety of what I gave you because it just gives you a taste of different kind of problems. And I mean, I've got more for you to practice. The ones I gave you for classwork, I've got these. I've got 4 or 5 different worksheets that are just, you know, some of them can get a little more intense. I try to kind of hit the middle of the road. So we've got domain, we've got range, and we've got function. Okay, do the vertical line test. Is it a function? Yes. You start listing x's. Now, every x doesn't have, it's not all real numbers because I already see that -3 doesn't have a y. I see that 2 doesn't have a y. I see 3 doesn't have a y. So it's not necessarily the x's they can't repeat, but there's some of them that don't work. So our domain is not all real numbers. It would have to be solid. It would have to be arrows on both ends for it to be all real numbers. Now, how are we going to bring this one down? You can't ignore, I cannot just put on this end an arrow and on this end put an open dot, which I agree with you it's going to be, but just hold it before I write it. But there's a problem. This, if I put an open dot here and make that solid, we're saying that -3 has a y, and it does not. You see, -3 does not have a y. So this is going to be one of those. Now we'll have to see, is it and or? I think it'll make sense to you what it is. So I'm just going to go to where the hole is, and I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to put an open dot right here, and I'm going to connect it. So that is this part of the graph. Now go right below that, and let's see what's going on the right side. So I'm going to start at that hole. And then what is it going to do over here? Are there any more holes? Does every number from -3 up to -2 have y's? Is -1 going to have a y? Is 0 going to have a y? Now, -3 didn't. Does 2 have a y? What's the y for 2? Oh, is that a solid dot? No. -2, 1 is not an ordered pair. So in your ordered pairs, it would be -2. There's nothing. -2 is not in your domain. We'll see how we write that in just a second. Remember? Like up here, 2 was not in your domain. See, 2, -3, excuse me, wasn't in your, in this case, -3 wasn't in your domain because it didn't have a y. -2 didn't have 1. It didn't have a y either. All of these over here is like they have holes. And all of these these are all solid dots. So let's go to here, and it's going to go all the way to 2, but it's also an open dot. Now tell me what this piece is. Tell me that piece right there. What is that? These are the x's, aren't they? X is -3. Now, these are not betweens together. They're not betweens. It's not between this and this or anything like that. It is simply this piece or this piece. Because to be and, it would have to be over here and over here too. And it's not going to work. So we're going to say or. Now tell me this side. Tell me what that is. X is what? Okay, it's between what two numbers? What's the small one? -3. And what's the big one? Is either one of them solid dots? No. Now, another way you might see it, you can write this if you want to. You don't have to. Again, I can't tell you everything the ACT is going to say, but look at this and see what you think about it. What if I say x is less than 2 and x cannot be -3? They don't say the same thing, but do they mean the same thing? This says that every number smaller than 2 has a y. Yes, 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 yes. Except for what number? -3. So that's kind of another way you could see it written. I don't care which one you use. That's just a feel for it as you're doing them. Now what about the range? Let's turn it sideways. Okay, we're interested from here to here. Now something's going on in both cases, because in this case the y is -2. Now if I go back to my points that I was doing, is there an x that has -2 as a y? Okay, actually I think there's several of them, aren't there? -1 gives me -2. -2 gives me -2. All those numbers between it, even all the way up to -2.9999. So in this case, even though there's an open dot right here at -2, there are other points that have solid dots over -2, and solid dots mean that it does have a value. So that's going to come down as a solid dot. Because you're telling me, is -2, can -2 be a y? And there's an example. I did -1, -2. You could do -2, -2. This lesson, a good way to go back to it, tells me, hey, lesson 2 is easy domain range, classic. This tells me that you really know what domain and range are. You're not having to just memorize this, oh, here's my points, here's the x's, here's the y's. It's making you think about what domain and range mean. And we talk about this a lot through the year. Now, what about on the upper end? Okay, I see an open dot here. So we've got to decide, is there any x that has 1 as its y? Not on this end, but is there any x's over here that have 1 in the y? It looks like it might be around here, doesn't it? So +1 is going to be when we look at our list. See, when we come down, +1 has a y, so I know that's going to be a solid dot. What about +2? Is there going to be an x that's going to have a y? What does this graph mean when it has an arrow? So look, do you see that right there? That it looks like about, if I sketched it pretty close, I think that's a -6. It looks like -6 has a +2. So in this case, it's an arrow that goes on forever. If you can get this part, you can get the answer, because you can tell me what that number line is. So what is that graph? Y is greater than or equal to, what's that number? -2. Y is greater than or equal to -2.